back on this rap-ish. I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list. Hope I ain't missing my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues. Guess if you ain't at the table, you on the menu. And I'm that spitter, baby. They don't want you to see, but everybody south to Capitol Hill's rocking with me. Boys smoke the trays and ponder getting their life together. I'm comfortable with my role, so I'm like, whatever. Me? I ain't got a job, but I work hard. And you don't work hard, but you got a job. The irony is I'm judged while you feel the applause. I'm slept on, that's why I had to set this alarm. My dudes is armed, I'm armed with this arm charm. Body banging like she got that cream from Barry Bonds. Yeah.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
That trade season is here, a real hitter with a mic, I'm everything that they fear. With that hood ain't the same, I was all on their ass, I'm level-headed. So yo, my dudes love when I spaz, and I'm so over Seattle's passive-aggressive attitude. They don't call you back, what they really saying is F you. While I'm from the same place, I move at a different pace. I prefer if you just said it to my face, damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Average dudes with they average spit, writing average rhymes, knocking average chicks. The closer I get, I can feel the people starting to shift. I'm loyal to a fault, and everybody can't come with. Rap's a rich man's game, I'm only playing with change. They bang models and singers, I'm knocking my own flame, I'm different. The crowd, I move with the chosen few. Black thoughts, I could be the front man for the roots. No diamonds and gold, I'm on my sticks and stones. If we can see your panty line, you should have on a thong. My team is strong, through this fire we forged a bond. And they already know what it is when I get on to the hearse. Party like it's December 31st. When I'm on my deathbed, I probably cracking my nurse. You ain't got the bars to compete. I'm a verbal athlete, deflating these boys so they say that I cheat. Damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
I should probably start by apologizing for the long wait, man. You know, I know I be tripping, but I'm not just a rapper, I'm an artist. And, you know, my creative process is a little bit different than most. Nonetheless, I want to welcome everybody out to the Dre's Experience. I got TCF in the building, my whole camp's here with me. I got the band in here laying this cool-ass vibe. And I'm Seattle's own. Let's get into it.
Welcome, everybody. Happy Tuesday to all of you out there. We are welcoming you to the Morning Update Show. I'm your co-host, Trey Holiday, and always a great day. I don't know if y'all are seeing that sunlight out there, but I sure am. What about you, O? What up, Big O?
Man, good morning. Good morning, Trey Holiday. How are you?
I am well, man. Happy Tuesday, my friend.
Happy Tuesday to you, too. You know, I'm always in some Mariners stuff. For most Mariners are converged, but today, actually, right after the Morning Update Show, me and Jake Gravbrot and Ibrahim Omar and Curtis Delgado, we're going over to Safeco Field, and we're actually shooting some stuff for Baseball Beyond Borders. Yeah, nice. So we're excited, you know what I'm saying, to break out the cameras over there at the Safe, and you know, and furtherance of baseball, and I mean our young people in our community embracing baseball again.
There we go, man. We talked about it. You know, baseball was the only, sport league. We owned. Yeah, exactly. In the Negro League. So there we go, man. Good for y'all.
Right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome you to the Morning Update Show. I want to remind you that right now is a perfect opportunity for you to tag and share the stream. Go ahead and tag and share the stream with people you feel could appreciate culturally relevant news and information emanating from right here in the Emerald City. And I'll be honest with you. Oh yeah, D'Alessandro is finally back tomorrow because everybody's pulling triple duty over here. Jake's pulling triple duty. I'm over here. You got a computer and a pedestal and all kinds of stuff. So man, today it was really interesting. You know, yesterday, I mean, we followed through with it yesterday on air. I was like, when we were talking about this where we're at with this $30 million and everything else. And we saw Council Member Morales' comments. I reached out to Mayor Durkan's office. And I was like, well, what's up? What you got to say? Talked to Mayor Durkan last night. Mayor Durkan hopped on last night at 6 o'clock, did an interview with Mayor Durkan, and we'll air that. And matter of fact, I made a little teaser. I got to get better at this. We're increasing our production over here. There's a little teaser.
The time for performance is over. It's time to do, and it's time to get that money in the community.
Yeah, that was Mayor Durkan last night. We've been keeping people mindful of a few things here. Let's see. And now we're not mindful of it anymore. Well, I can just say it on the air. Is that the vaccine? People can walk up. You can at Lumen Field out there at Rainier Beach. And where's the other ones? North Seattle.
There's one.
There's no appointment required. And, vaccine hesitancy is one of the things we'll be talking about in the coming days here. Another quick one real quick. FDA permits use of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID vaccine in kids ages 12 to 15. And this was big news. There's a lot of people who are, they're excited to go and get their kids vaccinated. Going into that's like middle school age children.
Yeah. I mean, literally. I mean, there's people that have been kind of waiting for this opportunity. So we'll see.
Yep. And also joining us today is we have Patrice Bell from the Northwest African American Museum. And the timing is interesting because they actually scheduled this time a few weeks ago to talk about their programming at NAAM. And of course, this last weekend, Omari Tahir was evicted by a King County Sheriff from occupying the space in front of NAAM. So of course, we got to talk about that as well as NAAM's program. And we've got our main man, Kevin Schofield. There's a lot going on down there at the City Hall. So we're going to check in with Kevin Schofield here in just 1 minute. I think we might actually be ready for Kevin right now. Yes, we are. So where did Kevin go? He's disappeared on us. Where's our buddy at? You see him? Oh, look, he's waving too. There he is.
It's like, wow, suddenly in the void. Like,
man, that green room gets lonely at times, huh?
I know, and it's looking kind of white rather than. Should I paint the walls green? Would that do you think?
Might be helpful. Nice sweatshirt though. You can definitely keep that.
Right on.
I have two of these, and one's the converter's starting to fade. This is the nice one. I keep this one nice, so like when I'm on air with you guys, like I'm really representing.
Love it, Kevin.
We appreciate it. And by the way, want to let our viewers know that it's a good way to support Converge. You can go to whereweconverge.com/shop. We really stay on air through like donations and things like that. Kevin, we're talking to you about two things here today. I know with you, wordy and nerdy, two things could be a 2-hour conversation, but we're on the live show here. So we'll keep it pretty brief. The first thing is that Councilmember Morales yesterday spoke of a proposal to take this participatory budgeting, this $30 million, and not necessarily go through Department of Neighborhoods, but the Office of Civil Rights and do an RFP procedure. Maybe you can tell us what information you've learned about this.
Yeah. So, recall this whole thing started, the city council budgeted $30 million for participatory budgeting this year. And the council put a proviso on it saying like, nobody can spend that money until we say so. So they actually have to pass an ordinance in order for anybody to spend any of that money. Back in February, the Black Brilliance Research Project submitted their final report, and it had guidance on themes for participatory budgeting, but it also had some specific recommendations on how the process should run. And their proposal for that said, we should hire about 35 people from the community. It should all be run outside of city government. And the proposal, sort of when you ran the numbers on it, would have cost about $8 million of that $30 million, which is about 23% overhead to do that. And Councilmember Morales looked at that. I talked to her about that, and she said, that's just too high. And she was aiming more like about 10%. So maybe spend about $3 million of the $30 million to actually run the process. And that's about on par with how grant proposal programs kind of get run. So Councilmember Morales kicked it over to the mayor's office and city departments to try to figure out a better way to do this. they've come back with a proposal sort of led by Deputy Mayor Tiffany Washington that said, well, we can run it really on the cheap if we run it, let the Department of Neighborhoods run it. That would be about $3 million, maybe a little bit less than that to do that. But what they've heard from the Black Brilliance Research Project folk and some other folks in the community is a strong feeling that this needs to be run by people outside city government and not people inside. So Morales now has two proposals in front of her. And in fact, there was supposed to be a presentation of these two proposals by the deputy mayor a few weeks ago that got postponed because it was scheduled for exactly when the Derek Chauvin verdict came out. And they haven't been able to reschedule that presentation. It's now scheduled for the 18th for next week on this, but it lays out these two proposals that, Morales thinks basically both are unworkable at this point. So she has a third option that she announced yesterday morning, and that is to release a $30 million, give it to the Office of Civil Rights and have them do an RFP and find an outside organization to run it. Maybe not sort of have the city directly hire 35 people in our own community to run it, but maybe it'll end up being, an organization in Seattle, maybe an organization somewhere else, like, this one called the Participatory Budgeting Project, which advises, in some cases, gets involved in running participatory budgeting programs around the world, and they're based in New York City. So they might, my guess is they would probably be one group that actually sort of put in a bid to run this. So Morales is she said she's going to introduce legislation that would lift the proviso so that the $30 million should be spent, give it to Office of Civil Rights, and require them to run an RFP.
Now, we're going to play this here in a bit. Mayor Durkan's interview, and Mayor Durkan, I asked her about it, and she said that this would be the biggest undertaking that the Office of Civil Rights had actually undertaken as far as budget and as far as actually administering a program. Why is it, did Morales say why she felt that Office of Civil Rights would be the ideal department out of all the city government departments to manage this?
She didn't say specifically why Office of Civil Rights was sort of her choice. The Black Brilliance Research Project folks in their final report were clear that they said basically under no circumstances should the Department of Neighborhoods be allowed to run this. And they didn't specify why they're so anti-Department of Neighborhoods either. But that's certainly an area of tension, right? That there's a general belief among the folks that the city council asked to go make a recommendation on this, that it should be outside city government, but to the extent that there needs to be city folks involved, and there will be, because there are a bunch of issues. One of the things that the deputy mayor is going to present on next week is that there are a number of legal and sort of logistical issues involved in trying to run a big program like this, like, limits on the city being able to gift money, right? Unless it's to the poor and infirm, right? So making sure that the city stays within sort of the legal requirements for how to grant out $30 million, is a big part of this. And whatever organization or individuals end up running this thing need to understand that. The Department of Neighborhoods has run, smaller level participatory budgeting programs before, like, the annual programs they do for, I forget the names of them, but they have a couple programs that they run at much smaller levels to this. So they have at least some experience in running these kinds of things. Office of Civil Rights doesn't mean they can't learn to do that or borrow expertise from Department of Neighborhoods. But for some reason there seems to be this tension around not letting the Department of Neighborhoods get involved in this.
Well, Kevin, I know that the mayor's task force also has some money that they are looking to, get in the hands of community. And they were going to be following the process kind of with this participatory budgeting. So do you have any idea of how, now maybe they're looking to kind of wait to see how this plays out so that they can know how to utilize the money that is given to them to kind of dispense to community?
Yeah, they're actually pretty close to making their recommendations. I was in fact talking to a spokesperson for the task force last week, and I'm supposed to be hearing more from them this week. They had a meeting a couple weeks ago where they sort of finalized their recommendations. It's apparently in sort of 9 different programs across 4 different theme areas, how they've divvied up the $30 million. They're planning on doing a big announcement in June with a presentation to the city council around this. And we should be hearing more in the next week or two on this. That $30 million is also under proviso by the city council. So, nobody gets to spend that money either until the city council blesses it and lifts that proviso. So they definitely have to run the gauntlet of the city council as well to get that money out.
Right.
But I just say that's an interesting issue because just in terms of schedule and timeline, they seem to be ahead of the participatory budgeting exercise, particularly if that goes out to an RFP. If the Department of Neighborhoods, was allowed to go run this thing, they could basically jump in tomorrow and start planning how the whole thing is going to go. If Office of Civil Rights has to do an RFP, that's months. That's probably at least 2 months to run that process before they even identify an organization to go run it.
Yeah.
All right. How much time you got today, Kevin?
I got time.
You got time for us? Okay. So real quick, why don't you tell us, because we're going to mix up the show a little bit. I want you to tell us about what's going on today at City Hall. Then we're going to play the mayor's interview from yesterday, and we can follow up on it. So tell us, there's $5.4 million on the table from the Seattle Police Department budget, and basically there's the push that people want to take that 5.4 million out of the SPD, right?
Yeah, so there's two things actually going on in a committee meeting right now, even as we speak on this. One is the thing that you just mentioned. This is something that's been hanging out for about 4 or 5 months now. A bill to potentially cut up to $5.4 million from SPD's budget, and this started late last year when there was an argument about whether SPD overspent its overtime budget. And the city council decided in December that they were going to take $5.4 million away from SPD because they had overspent it in other line items. But if they hadn't spent more on overtime, they could have covered those other overspends with that money. So, but then this year, as they've gotten into it, a couple things have happened. First, Judge Robart, the judge who oversees the consent decree, sort of weighed in with harsh words to the council and said, I'm watching you closely and I don't like what's going on with SPD and you guys trying to cut their budget and the high attrition levels there. And then since then, the court-appointed police monitor, Antonio Oftelli, has weighed in and said, I'm pretty concerned about these budget cuts as well because under the consent decree, the city has a responsibility to adequately fund and staff the police, and it looks like you're in the wrong direction. So what Councilmember Herbold, who chairs the Public Safety Committee, did was she sort of proposed another, amendment to this $5.4 million cut that said, well, we'll make it a $2 million cut and we'll give SPD back sort of the rest of the money to spend on some of the proposals they made for how to mitigate the sort of the worst impacts of the really high attrition they've seen with officers over the last year, which is, it's over 200 officers in the last 12 months at this point. And Octelli, the police monitor, still said, I got a bunch of questions around this. He's asked a bunch of questions. Last Friday, he sent a letter to Councilmember Herbold, basically saying, I still am not in favor of any cuts. He said, just read a couple parts here. He said, SPD is currently at risk of not being able to deliver key management operational requirements. And he says the city is in a legal agreement with the court to ensure the police department is functioning at an exceptional level and it has positive relationships with all its communities. In order to sustain compliance, the city is responsible for providing necessary support and resources to SPD in order to fulfill its obligations. Now is the time to allocate resources to SPD at levels that will enable the city to close out the consent decree efficiently, effectively, and sustainably. So he's saying, hey, I don't like these budget cuts at all, even like a $2 million cut. But it looks like from what Councilmember Herbold is pushing forward this morning with one last kind of tweak, she still wants to cut $2 million. And a lot of this is around, with all the attrition, there's a big sort of salary savings this year. And how should SPD spend it?
Let me just jump in here real quick. Just because I know it's a lot of people who will be asking this, does any of this money that be proposed to be cut, money that goes back into community or back into the participatory budget, is there a direct straight line from what people are talking about cutting and money going somewhere into a community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the $2 million that Herbold is proposing to cut right now would be moved over towards participatory budgeting. So it'd be added to the $30 million participatory budgeting pot that would make it $32 million instead.
Interesting. Any question on this, Sharon?
Well, yeah, my main question, Kevin, here is, there's been a loud voice, obviously, from community with regard to, defunding SPD and finding a way to move this money. I just got to ask you, in your opinion, I mean, you just laid out a lot there. What do you think is really the middle ground here? Is it that, Councilmember Herbold gets to, utilize this $2 million and give it directly to community? Or is there going to be some kind of pushback, as we just heard, that may stop this process?
Yeah. So, I think the big question is recognizing the SPD, because they've lost so many people, is well below their budget for what they could actually spend on personnel this year. They can't hire people quickly because they have like an 18-month pipeline to hire people. They know how many people they're going to hire this year. And even if they totally make that number, they're still not going to spend all their payroll budget. So what happens to all that extra money? Do they get to spend some or all of it trying to mitigate the fact that they're understaffed this year? Or should that money be taken out and put into participatory budgeting? Should be put into other community programs? Should be used for other things in the city that would improve community safety, or do other things to benefit the community and help people thrive? I think that's a key question. The Judge Robart seems to be very much against what he said so far. Is he's very much against cuts to the budget. At the end of the day, since the city voluntarily entered a consent decree, the judge sort of has the final say about whether they get to do those kinds of budget cuts. So there's going to be a heavy lift for Herbold and the city council to convince the judge that they really can't take this money out of SPD's budget. Now, the other thing that's going on right now is, and they're talking about this morning, is creating this new, basically sister organization to SPD called the Community Safety and Communications Department, that can be entirely civilian run, and they can take functions in SPD that are completely civilian and move them out of SPD. So basically, if they succeed at this, what's going to be left in SPD is the sworn officers and a whole lot, and not a whole lot else. So what they're talking about this morning is moving the parking enforcement officers and the 911 call center out of SPD over into this new community safety civilian-based organization. And over time, they've asked SPD to come back with recommendations about other groups in SPD that are also civilian that could be moved out as well. But they're starting with those two this morning.
All right. Well, I know you're going to be keeping up on that. We're going to take a quick break right now, and then we're going to jump into this interview I did last night with Mayor Durkan. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. See, I'm glad thing you weren't doing nothing crazy over there, Kevin Schofield.
Yeah, I don't want to say. Okay.
Kevin Schofield from SCC Insight right there. And actually, before we play this interview with Mayor Durkan, Trey Holiday, I can't mess that up. Trey Holiday had a question for you about HSD.
Yeah, I mean, my question really is because there's another process also happening, Kevin, right, with HSD and them actually getting proposals from community groups to talk about how they could utilize some of the funding to actually do community-based safety initiatives. So I just wanted to ask you quickly, how does that play into what we're talking about here with some of this defund money and, you know, some of these other measures with this community group that can do 911 calls and other things?
Yeah, you're right. That is a parallel process. The intent when that money was passed by the city council was that it be, as a request from the community, that it be capacity building, right? So with this notion that over time, if we want to be able to depend less upon police for community safety and depend more on our communities. There are a lot of organizations that are doing pieces of that today, but they've been running on bare bones budgets, and a lot of them just have never had the opportunity to grow, have never had the funding to grow, and maybe don't really have the muscles yet they need to be able to grow, to be able to support the kinds of asks we'd like to make of them across the community and across the city. So if we can do some capacity building now in those organizations, so that we have organizations here in the city that really can take up the slack from SPD. If we ask SPD, like, crisis response is a great classic example of this. If we want SPD to do less crisis response, and we want community-based organizations to pick up more, we better help them figure out how to grow now. So HSD is really leading that funding to go do that kind of capacity building in organizations. So when we're ready to move and say, okay, it's time to ask SPD to do less of this, we have organizations that are ready to step up.
So has there been any talk about how some of those community initiatives can be working with and alongside this other group that you were just describing that would be doing 911 calls and things like that? Has there been any discussion around, once they're at capacity, how they may be able to kind of funnel into what's going on in that group?
I don't know yet. I haven't heard yet about that. That's a really great question. This Community Safety and Communication Center is super new. They have an interim director in place, but it's basically just interim director at this point because they haven't moved anybody over yet. So now, as they move, the 911 call center, over, now that that's a proposal on the table that they're debating this morning, I think that will be the start of saying, hey, how do we really open this up? How do we plug in community-based organizations? Because right now at this point it's SPD and the fire department that are doing it. So if there's a way to plug in other organizations, that'll be a good first step to do that. But I don't think they have a plan for doing that yet because they're really just getting started with it.
All right. So we'll play this interview here. And, we like to play things the long format, let people answer questions. So 7 minutes. You're going to hang with us, Kevin, to the other side of this interview with Durkan. So, like I said yesterday, this conversation's here about this budget, this $30 million. And, the council, Morales is saying that the mayor's holding up the bread. And so I wanted to talk to the mayor. It's like it's community, what's happening with the money. And so we got the mayor on the line last night at 6 p.m. And here's the interview in full. I'm gonna just jump right into this, man. As somebody who not only saw our city go through what it's gone through in the last year, but was out there in the streets covering the protests, was impacted by the protests, for all the people that were protesting in the streets, or people who were doing public comment, or for people who wrote letters and everything else and wanted to see something happen here with the Black community. You made this promise, $100 million and everything else, and now it's gone through this process of research and coming back to city council. And to be honest with you, are you holding up the money? I'll just throw it out there because we want to know. And city council is saying one thing, you're kind of getting a vibe that you're obstructing this process and that you're against the process. You know me, man. I'll just ask people directly.
100% not. I want that money in the community. When I appropriated $100 million in the budget, I did it because I knew that was just the down payment of what we needed. And Omari, I think we need that over a period of at least 10 years. And I've always said and really believe the community needs to decide how that needs to be spent, where it's needed. We want communities that are resilient and healthy, with better education, home ownership, a chance, for opportunity and healthcare and housing right in the community. And we're making great progress. The Equity Task Force is already talking to departments, moving its 30 million, trying to figure out where to go. They've been working hard, and hopefully they're going to have something for the public, but it's their process. It's a community-based process. And I'm for participatory budgeting. I just want them to get done. I want council to make up their mind and move that money into the community. We need to do that quickly.
So are you saying then that the ball sits with the city council?
The ball is 100% in the city council's lap. And I will say, you've had Deputy Mayor Tiffany Washington on your program. She is the person who has been in charge of this. She met with the Black Brilliance researchers. She met with Councilmember Morales. She pulled all of government together to take the Black Brilliance Research Project report and try to get what they wanted to do, and presented a couple options, but made it clear that council needed to choose. There's a whole range of things that are still obstacles to get that money in the community. City attorney needs to review it. You've got to do RFPs. You've got all this task force, the steering committee to stand up, and then you've got to do the process. And I really don't understand why Councilmember Morales has chosen to just disregard Deputy Mayor Washington. I think it's very disrespectful, but more important than that, the time for performance is over. It's time to do, and it's time to get that money in the community. Right.
And Mayor Durkan, like, as a member of the community here in Seattle, and somebody, who's, like I said, been following this all along, it seems like now, again, the tensions are rising between city council and office of the mayor. We saw council members' comments to the crosscut, said that basically waging war against communities of color. What are your thoughts on that? And how did it get to this point? Do you guys talk to each other? I know it's COVID, but technically you're in the same building.
So to be clear, that was one council member, and I've been working with council members for several months now, and we're actually working really well together. I was, be honest, very taken aback by those comments. They're not only not true, they're very inflammatory. I don't think that helps anyone. I think what people want to see are results. They want to see things change. You pointed out, it was the hardest year in Seattle. And the George Floyd protest after the murder of George Floyd, and we saw that, I think people rightfully went to the streets and demanded better. And we have underserved communities for decades. And it shows in every indicator of health in our city. And it's time to quit talking, and it's time to start doing. And I am ready to move that money into community. And the longer people take and the more they quibble, the more people that suffer from it. I want us to work together. Put aside this 100 million, which I think is so critical to get into the community. You and I have talked about it before. We are seeing an uptick in violence that we need to address as a city. And we're seeing it across the nation. People are still hurting so much. And it does no good for them to see government fighting. What they want to see is results and change and positive change in their neighborhoods for their children.
Ma'am, speaking of results, before I let you go here, I'm going to ask you again, do you have any issue with this participatory budgeting process, or are you sitting there and obstructing this process from moving forward?
No, I want it to get going. I think participatory budgeting is really important. I said last summer I supported it. I said this winter I supported it. I said this spring I support it. And I think it's a really valuable way to get people engaged with each other about what matters most. And I think it's time to get it going. We just need council to pass the law, and it needs to be legal. They need to address all those things that Deputy Mayor Washington raised. You can't ignore them. But she sent that letter 6 weeks ago. And we're waiting. So I support participatory budgeting. I read the Black Brilliance Project, research project report. I think there's some great ideas. I think it overlaps with a lot of the ideas we're hearing from other places in the community. But it's time to let the people decide and get the process going so we can get that money to work.
Right. And now Councilmember Morales has proposed, I don't have all the details in front of me, but basically that this process now goes over to the Office of Human Rights and there's a RFP process over there. What are your thoughts on that proposal?
So she said that in crosscut, but we haven't seen any real proposal. I don't know whether she's addressed any of the issues that Deputy Mayor Washington raised in her very thoughtful letter. It's an office that has never done RFPs and RFQs of that size and never run a program like that. And I think we saw from the way they did the $3 million allocation that perhaps they should have been more thoughtful. And in this process, I think the worst thing that could happen is it goes and gets, the process doesn't work. And so people get disappointed. I think they deserve their government to get that money into community, to have a system that's going to work and not to raise expectations you can't meet. I mean, if you go back to last summer, Omari, Councilmember Morales made a promise to some people in the community that she was going to cut Seattle Police Department by 50% and use that money for participatory budgeting. But she didn't do that. And then she said she was going to do that for the 21 budget, and she didn't do that. If I hadn't put that 100 million in, we wouldn't even have this money. I want it to be used. I think participatory budgeting is great. I think it's going to be fascinating. I think the ideas in the Black Brilliance research report are really good, and they coincide with what we're hearing from so many other places. I just want us to get moving because we want to do it again next year. I'm pledging to you right now, I'm putting at least that much money in for participatory budgeting for next year. But council needs to pass it, and they need to make sure that it can get done and can get done legally.
Mayor Jenny Durkan, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Right. All right. So let's sit right there and give us a light here, Jake. So, I mean, I'll start with you first, Trey Holiday, as far as your thoughts on what we heard right there. Was some real interesting points that was brought up. One is it seems like Deputy Mayor Washington might be being circumvented in the process. It seemed like that's what it's heading to. I'm going to call Deputy Mayor Washington and see what's happening. But also, I do want to say this: we've reached out to Councilmember Morales. More than happy to have Councilmember Morales on here live tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? We want to hear what Councilmember Morales has to say. But your thoughts on Mayor Durkan?
Well, I think that, that was some information that, the public hasn't had, to be honest. And at the end of the day, I think that it's important to understand that Deputy Mayor Washington has really been involved. I mean, she has been reaching out to community groups. She's been reaching out to the researchers that were part of Black Brilliance Research Project. She's been doing the work to try to figure out how to really make the findings of that project come to life. And maybe there was some gaps, right? And she's even talked about that. And how can we allow this money to fill some of those gaps as well? I think it's important that we heard here from the mayor just now and today through your interview, that, look, they are ready to move this forward. They're not trying to hold up anything. And they're really asking city council and demanding city council to do what they said they were going to do and get this money out to community. I mean, she just made it very clear there.
Right. I mean, me, I just want to press people on behalf of the community. Somebody says somebody's holding up the bread. I want to ask them, are you holding up the bread? Yeah. The mayor is saying that the ball is in city council's lap. Is this true, Kevin Schofield?
In many ways, it absolutely is true. The city council, when they passed the budget for participatory budgeting, the $30 million, they put a proviso on it and said none of this money can get spent until we pass another ordinance saying that you can spend it, right? So, the mayor and the deputy mayor can't do anything with this. The Office of Civil Rights, Department of Neighborhoods, nobody can spend any of that money until the city council says, yes, you can go do that. So, the ball, in that sense, the ball is certainly in the court. And again, as I was saying before, and as the mayor mentioned a little bit, while she said she's supportive, there are some issues that need to get worked out, right? They need to decide like who is going to run this thing, right? Whether it's all outside folks and they're going to hire a bunch of people, or whether they're going to keep it internal and try to save some money by doing that. How much money do they want to spend administering it? How do they stay within the legal limits of being able to gift or grant money, because they want to spend a bunch of money, of that overhead money on making the program accessible to the community as a whole. And that might mean buying laptops for some folks, or tablet devices, or other things. And how do they do that legally in a way that doesn't run afoul of the state restrictions on gifts of government money? The Black Brilliance Research Project listed out some specific theme areas that they recommended participatory budgeting be limited, be built around. Is it, are the ideas generated that go into participatory budgeting limited to that, or is it broader than that? And sort of who gets to decide what those areas are, right? Which comes back to, is there a steering committee that runs this, and who's on the steering committee? So there are a bunch of issues that really do need to get worked out about doing this. And, what the deputy mayor has basically said is, hey, city council, just make some decisions and we'll do whatever you want. And, is that really true? Maybe.
Well,
but that's.
No, I was just going to say, I think you're really right, Kevin. And I really want to highlight here that this is really setting precedents, because before city council right now is almost $240 million of American Relief Plan Act money. That is also, there's been demand to how they're going to spend that money. So I just wanted to ask you quickly here, how do you see this process with regard to this 100 million now, 30 million over here and 30 million over there, and all of this kind of seems like bureaucracy, and it's hard for a lot of folks to kind of follow how this is, really a pinball moving through a pinball machine and trying to figure out where it's going to land. But how much of this process you think is going to set precedents for that next bit of money that is really going to be sitting with the city council?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Trey. It is definitely bureaucracy, and this is part of how tripartite government works. The city council has the purse strings; they get to say what money can be spent on what, but they don't actually spend the money. Right, that's up to sort of the mayor's office and the executive branch. That all reports up to her to actually spend the money, and city council can't force them to spend money. So at some point, they have to kind of agree on what they're doing across this. You're right. Also, there's $240 million of American Rescue Plan Act money coming, about $120 million this year, about $120 next year. The city council, led by Councilmember Mosqueda, is just starting their process of figuring out how they're going to spend that. So they've been collecting ideas from, or at least starting the process of collecting ideas from the community. They recently had an evening public hearing where anybody can come in and speak about their thoughts on how that money should be spent. My guess is they will want to spend some of it on community safety efforts, right? Will that be more money into participatory budgeting? I don't know. It's hard to say. I think at this point, until they actually have a plan for how they're going to run the participatory budgeting, I think there may be people that are a little hesitant on the council to say, yeah, let's put more money into that right now. Let's actually figure out how we're doing this first.
Right.
We've got a break right here because we've got Patrice Bell from Northwest African American Museum. So I know that we're going to continue this conversation. More than happy to have Councilmember Morales on here. I saw in the comments somebody was like, Mayor Durkan came on our show to smoke screen and forget about these text messages. Here's the whole thing is I put all these things in these boxes, and every time the mayor comes on here talking about these protests, the mayor gets flamed. And when I was sitting up there the other day, the Chauvin verdict there in City Hall, her and Chief Diaz. So that's a whole issue in itself. So believe me, if that's the pain people think is whatever, the mayor comes on here, which is good, bad, or indifferent, because as community, we're like, we want to hear from you.
That's right.
That's the whole point. We want to hear from you, and the community can agree or disagree. You know what I'm saying? But believe me, and especially as we approach the anniversary of the Seattle protest, I haven't forgot anything. I haven't forgot anything, and believe me, that's on the burner. We're going to take a break right now. Thank you, Kevin Schofield.
Thanks, Kevin.
We come back. We have Patrice Bell.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
Public Health, Seattle, King County, Zero Youth Detention, along with our partners from across the South King County region, are committed to reducing violence and creating the conditions needed for our neighborhoods to be safe and free of crime. Too often, the response to crime and violence has been a piecemeal approach with a program here and a program there. When family units collapse, schools fail to educate, the economy fails to produce jobs, and crime rises, we've looked to law enforcement and punitive measures to save us. Nothing could be more wrong or further from the truth. Law enforcement can't shoulder all the burden or take the rest of us off the hook. We are acknowledging the lived experiences of Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. We are centering community as the experts who can effectively identify key issues related to systems, policies, and practices that impact children, families, and communities of color across this region. Those most impacted by the issues will help call out and identify the root causes, including structural and systemic factors. 150 residents will partner with King County to develop strategies, solutions, and an action plan that explicitly addresses system changes needed and eliminates barriers to access for Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks. These residents will also identify the criteria used to measure our collective success. Simply put, we need your help as we do the work needed to make King County the safest in this country. It will take specific commitments from all of us, community members, our young people, elders, and leaders from the sectors all across this region. Together, we will get this work done. Please click the link below and sign up for a work group. Or you can recommend a co-facilitator from community for each work group. We look forward to hearing your ideas, concerns, feedback, and solutions as we build a community where all our children can be happy, healthy, hopeful, safe, and thriving.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name is Amari Salisbury. That's a good program right there, Zero Youth Detention. You guys want to check that out, looking for solutions and helping to disrupt gun violence across King County. All right, got you in the studio now, man. Patrice Bell, Northwest African American Museum. Welcome to the Morning Update Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, no, our viewers are like, man, that's a long commercial break.
I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's all good. And so a few things here. You scheduled this time here a few weeks ago. And in between the time that this interview was scheduled to talk about what Northwest African American Museum is doing, Omari Tahir was evicted out in front of you guys' museum by the King County Sheriff on Saturday. The elephant is in the room, so we can't have you out here now, and let's address that first. The sheriff has come through, moved Omari Tahir and all the items that he had there, and has now placed a fence in front of NAAM. Omari is still there, but what's NAAM doing moving forward?
Oh, NAAM's position is the same that it's been from day one. We are dedicated to a peaceful resolution, to some reconciliation, and we're continuing to fulfill our mission, just like we've done since the pandemic began. So we found new innovative ways to continue doing virtual programming. The accusation is we don't do certain work, but our work speaks for itself. And so that's what we're going to continue to do, doing the work.
Okay. And I know some of the museums are actually opening up soon. Some are already open now where people can go into the museum. Is there a timeline or a plan for the actual physical reopening of the museum?
Not currently. So what we're doing right now is focusing our energies on planning through the rest of the year virtual opportunities. If reopening is an opportunity that we can look at, it's something that we will consider. But right now we are focusing on some heavy hitting virtual and outdoors programming. So you've been to a few. You saw when we had Cornell West. We've had our Descendants series is going on. We had Alelia bundles, and we're going to continue doing this work. So even just in this virtual space, we've been able to reach so many more people. So we're continuing to make the plans to do our work virtually.
All right. And so that being said, two of the things, you sent over a lot of stuff, and clearly we can't fit everything here on screen, but one of them was Malcolm X.
Yes.
And so maybe we've got it up here on the screen right now. You can tell us what this is all about.
Yes. So in alignment with even kind of our Descendants series, we have our Malcolm X Day celebration, our annual Malcolm X Day celebration. We kicked it off last year in the midst of COVID, and we did everything online. But this year, doing a virtual program with Ilyasha Shabazz, his daughter. That same day, that afternoon, we're going to be in Federal Way High School doing our Knowledge is Power book giveaway. So we're giving away books that are actually written by Ilyasha about her father and her mother, Betty Shabazz. So that's going to be a special themed book giveaway. We do those at least twice a month. So that'll be fun. And then to close out the celebration of his life, we have a drive up movie at the Museum of Flight. We're going to show Spike Lee's Malcolm X.
So drive up movie. So it sounds like it's a drive up movie. That's what I'm assuming, right? It's just...
You drive up in your vehicle, you park, you turn on your radio. We'll have the frequency on the screen, and you listen to it through your car. It's something like a drive-in movie. For legalities, we'll call it drive up.
Okay. All right. And another one I picked out here, because I know it has a lot of sentiment to a lot of people in our community. I saw you're doing something for Juneteenth.
Yes, we are doing a lot of things for Juneteenth. We are actually celebrating a Juneteenth week this year. It is going to be absolutely amazing. We are starting off on Sunday, and we are going all the way through the next Monday. So we do our interactive story time every second Sunday. So the 13th falls right in alignment with that regular date. We have some book readings with Elliott Bay and Town Hall. We have a Black Grad Night that we're going to be doing to celebrate the Black grads in the state and celebrating our youth curators. We're going to be doing a talent search with Chihuly Garden and the Space Needle. And then we're going to have a Juneteenth Jamboree. So I am from the South. I'm from Oklahoma, Texoma to be exact. And we do Juneteenth big. And so I'm really excited to bring a little bit of that flavor here to Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, it's a state holiday now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, good stuff. So tell everybody how they can keep up with the Northwest African American Museum and the programming that you guys are doing.
Absolutely. We keep all of our programming on our website. So it's naamnw.org. NAAMNW.org. We keep our events there. If you follow us on socials, we're very active on Instagram, Facebook. So you can always see the upcoming events there. And you can also join our texting line. It's new, but we will text you all of the events that are coming up, so you never miss anything.
All right, good stuff. Patrice Bell. track
you.
star.
Oh yeah.
You was running back there. Thank you for joining us here today on the
Absolutely.
Morning Update Show.
Thank you for having us.
I did it for the city. I did it for the love. I did it for the people. I did it for us.
Back on this rap-ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. I got my buddy back,
Yeah.
Trey Holiday.
That was a pretty great interview. You know, keeping it concise. I'm glad she was able to talk about what happened up there at NAAM. I'm glad you opened up with that. You know, you're like, hey, the elephant's in the room. Got to keep it real here.
Ain't
it's
no
part of
way
it.
you can have somebody from NAAM on the show after what happened this weekend. And be like, hey, well, how are you today?
Just talk about your programming. Yeah.
You know what I'm
But,
saying?
they really have continued their programming through, COVID and, having to be shut down. And I think there's a lot of museums that have been utilizing some innovative, tools and measures to keep programming alive. It's been a struggle.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, we had so many headlines today that we were planning to get to. I think that we're going to end up, of course, pushing them to tomorrow. But it was a good conversation with Kevin Schofield. Huh?
Oh my gosh, there's so much to discuss there. And honestly, I have so many more things to kind of dive into with him because I think it's so important. And it's tough for a regular person. Like for us, we cover this stuff daily. We understand a little bit more about some of the politics and how some things play out. But for somebody that's just like, man, I'm just hoping that this money hits my lived experience. It's hard for them to follow all of these little windows.
And this is what I'm saying. So like on every little thing, and that's what I'm saying. There's these issues, and one thing I don't want to do is just have everything clouded, right? Because this issue with this money is now a different issue than whatever's going on with these text messages, which is now also a different issue from this police violence that we faced this summer, last summer, and the impacts of that and everything else. You see what I'm saying? But, it's easy to just cloud. Nah, man, we want to get to the bottom of every issue that's here. And this issue that's right in front of us right now is this $30 million. But because it's all this finger pointing and everything else, and this money goes to the heart of our community, man, somebody going to come clean on this.
Yeah, and this is another reason why it's important for us to press. We've talked about it before. When you're talking about, man, it's going to be steeped in bureaucracy, the money's never going to come out. This is too important for us not to dive deep on this issue. Oh, absolutely. So, we're wanting our people to have some elevation of their lived experience and material conditions in the Black community being raised. That's it.
And that's what I'm saying. And I'll say this to Mayor Durkan. I say this to any city council members. One thing for sure that I know for sure I can say is us Black folks is tired of politicians appropriating our pain for political gain. Let me say it again. We Black people are tired of elected officials appropriating our pain for political gain. I mean, man, them days is like, it's over. You know what I'm saying? Let's just stand and deliver. That's it. Just stand and deliver. Let's leave all this other stuff on the sideline. You know what I'm saying? We need the adults in City Hall to please stand up and just stand and deliver. That's it,
period. I mean, there's even nothing more to say there. We talked about this yesterday. Please do not utilize all of our struggles to elevate your political career, to make these notches on your political belt. We have seen this time and time again. And I just got to say, Mayor Durkan said it there. Performativism is out. We heard Executive Dow Constantine saying the same thing. It's true. We've been saying it since day one. So ultimately, it's really now time for the move to happen so that people are really experiencing these investments in their communities and seeing it happen full throttle.
That's it. Stand and deliver. That's what we asking for. We're up against it, Trey. Actually, we're overtime. You got any last words before we get out of here?
Man, as always, you guys can see how important it is that your voices are a part of this process. You guys know my message is to see yourself as a part of the solution. We need to be able to educate our community members, our family members, our colleagues, our friends, our neighbors on these processes. So for all of you out there watching, find ways to see yourself as a part of the solution, please.
All right. I know one thing I'm going to say is I'm glad that all your D. Alessandro is back tomorrow.
You are missed.
Hey, I'm telling you, T Converge, man. We know how to do everything over here. You know what I'm saying? It's not one thing in here that all of us don't know how to operate, which is a good thing. Man, I'm excited. Getting ready to head over to Safeco.
Yeah.
And we're actually doing a shoot over there. Really, really excited about that. You know how much I love that ballpark. I'd say that's it. We're going to stay on top of this and all these other issues, and we'll update you tomorrow as well to see what happens in City Council today around the $5.4 million, the cut from SPD. Want to remind everybody to go forward in your purpose, go forward in your humanity, and until tomorrow at 11 a.m., peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on to victory.